characteristics, especially when you're examining if something is a gift, is making sure that how the funds are being allocated. A lot of the times where I have come back with my faculty members when we're discussing if something's a gift or a grant, when you're looking at the definition between a donor intent and what is actually a measurable deliverable, donors can still ask as part of their gift to have it be intended for a certain purpose. A lot of the times where you're going to see this is if you're working for a center perhaps, you're going to have an endowment fund. And usually those endowment funds are going to be allocated either for scholarships, maybe a chair that's coming on that's overseeing additional duties, and those allocations are going to be used for that specific purpose. To me, it's a little bit different from a deliverable, because a deliverable is usually something your faculty member is doing or creating to give back to that sponsor. So if you're looking at it as maybe creating a widget or creating some sort of like mathematic problem that they then give back to the sponsor in exchange for those funds. A donor, best case scenario is, they're giving those funds with the hope that it's going to be used. Normally in those terms and conditions, they're not held to being able to be used for that way. So we've seen in the past sometimes where those scholarship funds are maybe used in a different way to pay for like books or fees for the students instead of like a scholarship fund. So those really differ versus where you're going to see a grant and grant contract where you're really going to be held to these outcomes. The next thing you really want to focus on is the period of performance. If you see a period of performance or a budget period, anything stating a timeline, it's not a gift. A gift is with the intention that you're going to get those funds and the university is going to see and use them how they see fit on their own time schedule. It really gives the flexibility to the university to use those funds however they really want to. And so a gift, no contractual requirements or agreement may be done. A lot of the times, depending on your institution, you're going to see, it's usually called, I think it's like a donor agreement. And that's where you're going to see those terminologies like with the donor intent. So your donor is going to say, I am donating X number of funds for the intent of this purpose, and then they sign off. And this is going to differ from institution to institution because your development office may have a different way of how they want to present those funds or how they want to track those funds in terms of their internal amounts, but usually that's there too. And the last kind of point I'd like to touch on too is reporting. If you have set report timelines, that's going to be usually a grant or a contract. Now, a donor could ask possibly for good stewardship just to see how the university is making progress, but that's not something you formally have to do. Usually, if you have a really good relationship with your donor, you're going to do that just so they can continue to see that you're using their funds in a responsible manner, to hopefully with the inclination of them continuing to donate to the university. I kind of touched on this lightly, but really the main purpose of these gifts is just to benefit the university in some way. The donor is just wanting to give these funds for whatever purpose that they see fit through their donor intent. And normally, depending on how your instruction works here, is for the funder is usually going to be private or non-governmental sources. So you're going to see possibly a lot of foundations, either just one singular person giving these funds. You're never going to see like a federal agency, NIH saying, oh, we're just going to give you these funds.
Let's enjoy that moment for a second, because it's the one time at this conference where you get to hear a panel say, never will the federal government do something. They don't give gifts. The federal government does not give gifts. Don't set those up for your development office. Don't expect a check, and don't send that file to your development or advancement office.
No.
That's not a gift.
That's not a gift. You will sometimes see, though, and I'm sure Natasha's going to touch on this with the grant section, you will see foundations actually set up, funding announcements for grants, and so that's really at the post-award side of things. When you're looking at these questions, whenever, especially from like a foundation or a private nonprofit, what you want to do, especially on the pre-award side, is you want to look at the funding announcement itself. See what's being asked. See if possibly a CFDA number is being tied to it. If that's being earmarked for a federal purpose, more likely than not it's going to be a grant, because that foundation or whoever's doling out those funds eventually have to report back to that federal agency to let them know that they did use those funds for that specific purpose. Another thing you're going to want to check to see is there that period of performance listing there? Is there that timeline that they're asking for? If there is, it's not going to be a gift. And the last kind of pre-award question you're going to want to look at again is, what are the purpose of the funds? What is really this sponsor asking for? Is it to work on science or develop research? Or are they giving these funds to kind of better your center for students or a scholarship fund? You really want to look at what that intent is, because that's also going to drive if something's going to be a gift instead of a grant or a contract.